You might have seen recent headlines all about the Cowichan decision in the BC Supreme Court, and you might be wondering, how might this impact you as somebody living in Vancouver or considering moving to Vancouver? And ultimately, those are really important questions that I'm going to try and get to the bottom of in today's video. This ruling could completely reshape land ownership and how we understand it in British Columbia. By the end of this video, you're not only going to understand what this decision is, but also what makes it unique and what it could mean for you as somebody living in and potentially moving to Vancouver. Let's get into all of it right now. My name is Sebastian Albrecht with the Living in Vancouver BC team, and welcome back to the channel. This channel is all about moving to and living in Vancouver, and I put out videos just like this one every single week. This week, we're getting into a current event, something that I don't actually typically do, but I'm finding a lot of people are asking about this and a lot of people are very confused and there's a lot of misinformation. So this is my effort in order to give you an understanding of what's happening right now and to give you as unbiased an opinion as I possibly can on exactly how this court decision might impact you as somebody who is currently living in Vancouver or potentially considering moving to Vancouver and purchasing a home. All right, so what exactly are we talking about here? Well, in 2019, the Cowichan tribes brought forward a court case in the BC Supreme Court against the Crown, trying to establish whether or not they had Aboriginal title on a particular piece of property. Now, who are the Cowichan? Well, the Cowichan are an Indigenous nation within Canada, very specifically on Vancouver Island in the Cowichan Valley, but they were not confined specifically to that area. And in fact, in the summer months, they had a village in the Metro Vancouver area, and they came over here to fish primarily along the banks of the Fraser River. And today, that's just east of the Massey Tunnel in the city of Richmond. Now, the issue at hand is the Crown does own a lot of that land, but there are also about 150 private landowners that own land there. And my understanding is that one of the nuances of this case is that the area in question where this village was located was promised to the Cowichan as an Indian reservation, as we used to call it. And so essentially they were going to put that land aside for the Cowichan. However, that did not take place. And in fact, the person that was supposed to do this sneakily bought that land himself and then transferred it to new landowners. And subsequently over the years, that property has continued to transfer from one person to another. Now, my understanding in this court case, the Cowichan were not seeking redress from the landowners that lived in the area. What they were going after was the Crown, both the province of British Columbia as well as the federal government. However, what's unique about this court case is that for the first time ever, the court is grappling with this idea of Aboriginal land rights where there is private property and not just Crown land. We've been dealing with this issue of Crown land for some time over the course of the last 20 years or so. And so the issue now becomes what happens when Aboriginal title is recognized on a parcel of land that is owned in fee simple by another owner. And that is the question that is really sort of at the heart of this issue and what everyone is trying to grapple with and what there is so much confusion about currently. That being said, I think one of the most important things to understand is this is a trial level decision at this particular moment. Yes, the result of this trial really did throw a spanner in the works and has led to a lot of uncertainty and a lot of fear mongering, frankly. However, being a trial level decision, there is a lot of unknowns here, and we are still a long way for this having a significant impact. There are going to be appeals. There's a possibility of this going to the BC Supreme Court. There is, of course, also the possibility of side deals being made, or in fact, even a treaty being struck between the province of British Columbia and the Cowichan. But I think it's really important to note that this is already being appealed. And even from the point of view of the court decision, what the court is saying is that they're directing the province to find some sort of solution, find some way of clarifying what this means when Aboriginal title is recognized on the same piece of property that fee simple is recognized. So why does this decision matter? Well, ultimately, this puts into question our entire land title system, our torrent system, in which only one person or one entity can hold fee simple ownership of a property. The thing is now, what happens when two entities own that property? There's Aboriginal title and there's also fee simple title on these 150 parcels of land. And what it does is create a lot of havoc, a lot of uncertainty, and people don't really understand or know what this is going to mean. People a lot more educated and a lot more understanding of Aboriginal law are currently unsure of what exactly this all means. And we need more direction from the court. We need more direction from the province. But at the moment, what the Cowichan are saying is they're not seeking the ownership, the land land back from these private owners. But for these private owners, this is significantly impacting their ability to use this property. More than likely, they're not going to be able to sell this property tomorrow. They're not going to be able to sell it, at least for the value that it was yesterday, because now there's a lot of uncertainty, and a potential buyer is going to want to protect themselves on that uncertainty. And then there's also the question of whether or not you can get a mortgage on these properties. And there are some of these owners that have come out publicly and said, in fact, that their mortgage company is coming forward and saying they will not renew a mortgage on this property. And so because of this uncertainty, because of this ruling, it's not really clear how this is all going to play out today. There's a lot of uncertainty for both the landowners that are there, but also potential developers of that land. But it also has implications for future development. It has implications for zoning, and it has implications for the approvals of what might happen with that land. Because not only the current owner owns it, the person who thought they bought it, maybe 5, 10, 20 years ago, but also the people that used to occupy that land now also have rights to that land. And this is a precedent that could ripple across British Columbia. There are some unique factors, as I said, about this particular site, but it does have implications for the entire province. And frankly, it also has implications for our entire country. In fact, my understanding is that there's an Indigenous tribe in Quebec that is seeking a similar outcome in a court case that they just filed in the last few days following this decision. So there are implications, not just for the Lower Mainland, not just for British Columbia, but also for potentially our entire country. And all this uncertainty requires certainty. We need some direction. We need some clarification for our entire country. And that is something I'm going to talk about in a little bit. But before I get there, I do want to put this out there that, of course, this isn't my area of expertise. And I'm doing my best to sort of wade through a very complicated court case. The decision itself is an 800-page decision. This was the longest court case in British Columbia history. And I have to be frank with you, I did not read that 800-page decision. I have read a lot about this decision. I've read a lot of articles. I've paid attention to exactly what's happening here. But I personally have not read this decision. And honestly, I think most of the people that you're going to be listening to have not read this decision either. In fact, I don't think I could physically read 800 pages in the 2 days that it's been since this court decision was released. I don't know how fast of a reader you are, but I'm not that fast of a reader. But of course, the other thing I want to point out is bias. And I am not Indigenous. I am a landowner in British Columbia, and I'm also a real estate agent. So obviously, I have a particular point of view that not everybody that is talking about this issue is going to agree with. I'm trying to be unbiased here, but of course, everybody has to understand that there is bias that is introduced here. And you got to be thinking about that no matter where you're getting this information from, where you're trying to figure out what this means. But ultimately, that's what I would advise you here. You need to be listening. You need to be using your critical thinking skills. And what I am seeing is a lot of bias coming from all sorts of directions. It's difficult to wade through, but what I would hope is that we're all doing our best here and that we're approaching this with an open mind and an effort to be understanding and an effort to try and find a solution. I do think that there's a way forward here. I am not panicked. I don't think you should be either. This is still relatively early stages, but I do hope that watching this video is going to help you understand exactly what it means, at least as much as we can understand, given the amount of information that we currently have. So what does this mean for you right now? Well, as a potential home buyer in Vancouver, you got to be cautious. You got to be doing your due diligence. But honestly, it's not really an immediate concern for anyone that's purchasing in Vancouver. This is not something. Our land rights are not at risk in this very moment. There's a lot of clarification that has to happen. But what it does show is that land ownership in BC isn't as straightforward as we've all assumed. And it also indicates the importance of working with a professional, both realtors that understand this issue as well as lawyers. And I would suggest if you are looking at purchasing a property right now, or if you currently own one, you want to be talking to your real estate lawyer and you want to see what they have to say about this decision and what kind of risks you have. And you also want to be talking to your lender and understanding what they see as being the risks and how this might be impacting you and their willingness to extend financing to you now and in the future. And then third, the other thing that I'd be doing is looking into title insurance. And for the most part, my understanding with title insurance is that title insurance excludes Aboriginal rights. However, I don't believe every single one of them does, at least pre-existing claims. Or sorry, it will exclude pre-existing claims, but if there are no existing claims, there are some land title insurances that may cover you for this kind of issue. But that's something you're going to want to research and look into in a lot more detail moving forward. All right, so what's going to happen next? First of all, what's already happened is that the Crown has appealed this decision. And so what's going to be the outcome of that appeal? And will this lead to a Canadian Supreme Court decision as well? And that's quite possible. Ultimately, this could be in the courts for many, many years. This is not likely to be resolved very quickly, but there is immense political pressure very suddenly to resolve this issue. And there's immense pressure on the Crown. And by that, I mean both the provincial government as well as the federal government to seek some solutions here. And so my expectation is I think we are going to see a lot more certainty because of that political pressure. I think that the government is going to be motivated to find a solution here. They're going to clarify what happens when there is this dual title, this Aboriginal title, as well as this fee simple ownership. And my suspicion is we're not going to see land taken away from people that already own it, whether they are Aboriginal or whether they are newer owners of that land. And in one way or another, that issue is going to be resolved. I think it's going to be resolved in a way that gives confidence to our economy and to the real estate industry in general. There's too much of our economy that is based on the real estate industry for that not to be the case. And there's too much of government income that is based on that as well. And ultimately, honestly, that is also to the benefit for the Indigenous tribes in Canada. They want that land, or they will benefit if that land has value, and in some way if they're compensated for it. So I think there is a way forward. I think that there is going to be clarification. I think it's probably going to happen a little bit sooner than we expect. But at the moment, there's a lot of uncertainty. However, we've been in this uncertain area for centuries and most recently decades, but we've just sort of been unaware. The outcome of this, I think, will be incredibly positive, as it's going to give incredible stability, both to our economy, but most importantly to the real estate industry and our understanding of land ownership, not only in Vancouver, but British Columbia and in Canada as a whole. And I think all of that is going to be really, really positive. So ultimately, this is not something that we need to be panicking about. Really, this is something that we need to understand. And really, it drives home the point that British Columbia is a province that was established without treaties. This is unceded land. And on top of that unceded land, we created a real estate market. And the more understanding, the more awareness there is about this, the more willingness there is to find a solution, the better the way forward, the more stability we're going to have. So honestly, I am quite optimistic. I'm quite hopeful. I think we're moving forward in that direction. And I think it's going to be good for all of us. I hope you got something out of this video. I hope it gave you some clarification on what the issues are. It's a complicated issue, and I'm doing my best here. This isn't my area of expertise. Obviously, I'm not a lawyer. I'm a real estate agent, but I think it's important that you understand what's going on here. And as this evolves, I'm also going to try and keep you updated. Of course, if there's any major changes to this issue moving forward, I'm going to let you know. The Cowichan decision ultimately doesn't mean that your home is at risk, but it does mark a turning point in the way that we think about land ownership in British Columbia and the way that we're thinking about reconciliation as well. So if you're still thinking about moving to British Columbia and Vancouver very specifically, and you're still wanting to buy a home, don't forget that I'm a real estate agent that has helped hundreds of people do exactly what you're doing right now. Not just find the right neighborhood, not just find the right community, but find the perfect home. And I can help you and your family do exactly that as well. My contact information is right there on the screen. Whenever you're ready, please reach out. All it is a conversation. We can get that ball rolling. But if you're not quite ready to do that, if you'd still like to do a bit of due diligence, a little bit of research on your own, I've got you covered as well. I have almost 150 videos now all about what it's like living in Vancouver for those of you moving to Vancouver. It's a huge resource that I want you to make sure that you're taking advantage of. Be sure to check out that big back catalog of videos that I have designed to answer all of your questions. But there is a couple videos that I want to make sure that you're paying close attention to. Number one is this video over here, all about the types of people that shouldn't be moving to Vancouver. And then this video over here is all about the cost of living in 2025. Check out those videos. Thank you so much for watching this one and sticking with me all the way to the end. I'll see you next week.